We invited City Council to come here. As you can see, they're not actually in their chairs. Nameplate staying up. We're going to have testimony about the Joint Terrorism Task Force report, and the City Council is welcome to listen if they will or not. My name is Dan Handelman. I'm with the Portland Copwatch. The groups that are speaking today were all part of the campaign to get the Portland Police to pull out of the Joint Terrorism Task Force last year. City Council voted a majority vote to pull out. Part of the resolution that followed that pullout requires an annual report. The annual report was released on Friday, and speakers today are going to address that report. Also, a number of the organizations involved in the campaign wrote their own report about what happened, what we knew about what happened with the JTTF in 2019. We released that report on January 15th. If you need a copy of that, see me, I have them. We do not have the council clerk out with us today. Just to be clear, the reason we're holding this council hearing with our absentee council members is that Mayor Wheeler refuses to take testimony when there's a report heard in front of City Council. And this is going to be a report tomorrow. So none of the community members are going to be able to talk tomorrow. So that's why we're holding our own City Council hearing. So I'm going to call people up one at a time by their organizational name. They'll introduce themselves and give their testimony. The first speaker is from the Portland JACL.
Hello, my name is Marlene Wallingford, and I am the member of the Portland Japanese American Citizens League. And the Portland JCL is the oldest Asian American civil rights organization in the nation. When the Japanese first immigrated to the United States in the early part of the 20th century, no Asian was allowed to become a citizen. So we faced structural and institutional racism that led to our forced removal and incarceration during the Second World War. Because of so-called military necessity. We were denied our due process because we look like the enemy. As it turns out, not one Japanese or Japanese American was found guilty of espionage or giving sensitive military information to the Japanese military. The argument of military necessity turned out to be a lie. The wartime military leadership had attempted to destroy its final report on the Japanese evacuation from the West Coast, which explicitly stated there was no danger from the Japanese American community. There were 10 copies made of this report. There was a concerted effort to destroy all of those copies, but a single remaining copy was found of the final report, which was the proof copy that somehow got misplaced. So even when the government's investigation found no threat, this information was kept hidden, and the media spread false information about the danger the Japanese were to the security of the West Coast. So we are speaking today because even though it's 78 years later, the FBI is continuing to use flawed theories to determine who is dangerous. The FBI investigated Buddhists and Shintoists as a potential threat to national security. They considered these people less loyal than Japanese American Christians. Similarly, people who studied Japanese or traveled to Japan were looked upon with the same suspicion. We need only exchange the fear of potential national security threat from the Japanese to Middle Easterners and followers of Islam to understand that we are still stuck in the biases and stereotypes of the past. In the aftermath of 9/11, the Patriot Act was passed. This act gave increased powers of investigation to the FBI. It violates American citizens' constitutional rights and allows our government to spy on us without due process, search our homes without consent, and increase the risk of ordinary citizens accused of crimes without just cause. Again, we have let fear guide us how we treat our citizens rather than our rights from the Constitution. We have worked with local community groups to encourage the City Council to stop assigning the Portland police officers to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. We were concerned about the lack of local government oversight to its operations. The Police Bureau has a severe shortage of officers, and our public safety is better served by having our officers engage and develop relationships within our own community to provide a safe environment. We applaud the Portland City Council for standing up for the rights of our citizens, and we must continue to be vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next speaker is going to be from 350 PDX.
Hello, my name is Anais Tipker. I'm with 350 PDX, which is devoted to building a grassroots movement to address the climate crisis. Commissioners, Mayor, with last week's release of the Portland Police Bureau report to City Council on the Portland Joint Terrorism Task Force, the moment is right to call your attention once again to the ways in which climate activists, among others, in Portland and around our state are increasingly monitored. The Bureau's brief report provides some useful information, but there are areas where it would be desirable to know more. In particular, nothing is shared about the nature of the 12 cases referred to the FBI by the Portland Police Bureau. The report says nothing about the type of information given to the FBI or what individuals or organizations were involved. Over the past 6 months, at least 2 investigative reporting articles have documented that the FBI has collected information about activities of climate activists in Oregon. In one of those articles, an FBI officer is quoted stating that the agency cannot, quote, initiate an investigation based solely on First Amendment protected activity. It is not clear from this report that information provided by the Portland Police Bureau through the JTTF mechanism is not being used to facilitate a questionable entry point into investigation. A continuing point of concern is the lack of disclosure regarding communication between FBI and Department of Homeland Security. We know that DHS now considers some nonviolent climate activists as domestic terrorists. And we also know that activists opposed to the proposed Jordan Cove LNG export facility and its accompanying Pacific Connector pipeline in southern Oregon have had their activities monitored by both government agencies and private contractors that claim to focus on terrorism. In case you think this southern Oregon surveillance doesn't affect Portlanders, I would like to remind you that hundreds of Portlanders traveled to Salem for a protest against this project in late 2019, and I assure you they will continue to turn out against this proposal until it is defeated. In addition, the report documents involvement of Portland police officers in monitoring activists against the Jordan Cove project, and the JTTF in Portland has been documented to be the provider of training and online surveillance of activists for groups around the state. Climate activists in Oregon know that our activities are being watched by our opposition, and we know that information we share on social media or elsewhere will be cataloged. What we don't know is what next steps are taken in secret, facilitated by agencies emboldened because of a lack of oversight. Therefore, I urge you to push for as much disclosure as possible from the JTTF until we fully extricate ourselves from it, and it has no place in our city. When the media reports that climate activists are considered by the state as dangerous and deserving of surveillance, it has a chilling effect on our movement. Labeling people in this way is a deliberate tactic to give the general public pause and draw their support away from causes and actions they might otherwise be sympathetic to. So even without that terrible and unjustified label, the monitoring of climate activists right now is visible enough to dissuade everyday people frightened and concerned about the climate crisis from getting involved and being empowered. And it especially keeps out people who have reason to be distrustful of the state's willingness to protect them. Black people, people of color, Native people, immigrants, refugees, Muslims, the poor and precariously housed. The climate issue affects these people more, not less, than it does the more secure and less policed members of our society. Climate is their issue, and the solutions we are going to need will often come from those for whom finding ways to live around and outside the extractive economy has been a matter of survival. So there are both morals and practicality involved when I ask you to recognize how incredibly important it is to ensure the freedom of climate activists alongside all activists for climate justice to express their positions and do their work. Thank you.
Okay, now calling myself up to testify from Peace and Justice Works in Portland Copwatch. I'm Dan Handelman. Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners Hugh Daly, Fritz, and Hardesty. Peace and Justice Works and Portland Copwatch continue to have deep concerns about cooperation between the Portland Police and the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. Reporting of JTTF activities from 2018, released last year, revealed that Portland Police worked on 29 assessments. The FBI can open such cases on speculation, a standard which does not necessarily include reasonable suspicion of criminal conduct as required by Oregon law. The officers from the Bureau's Criminal Intelligence Unit, who have special security clearance to work with the JTTF, told the mayor on record at a council hearing they had not violated Oregon law. There is no way for the community to know whether working on those assessments means that the officers A, violated state law, and B, were untruthful when they stated otherwise. The new report shows the FBI asked for PPB assistance in 10 cases, 9 of which were resolved as not including criminal offenses, and 1 which is still open. The report is, again, not clear what the PPB's role was in these investigations. 3 of them only allege that people were affiliated with white supremacist political philosophies, one of whom talked to another person in a bar. While these political views are disturbing, expressing them is not criminal. If the PPB helped conduct investigations in these cases with no allegations of crimes being committed, they violated the law. The other incidents include direct or vague threats toward the British royal family and the Portland Police. Those cases were also resolved without criminal charges, with 2 referred to the PPB's Behavioral Health Unit, indicating these so-called suspects had mental health issues. 1 other was determined to be the work of an artist, not a terrorist. In addition, the report cites 12 cases where the PPB contacted the FBI about various issues, including bomb threats and threats against public officials. There is no report on the outcome of these cases, though it is likely that one of them is a case where the JTTF seized guns from Shane Cofield, as reported by the Oregonian last August. Cofield threatened to kill Antifa members and made other violent threats during an action in front of Mayor Wheeler's house. As with other Portland police reports, it seems strange not to include such publicly available information, since it would promote transparency and build community trust. There's no mention about information revealed in August by The Guardian, which showed the Portland Police CIU coordinating with the FBI, state law enforcement, and private industry, making attempts to criminalize and disrupt people engaged in lawful activity opposing the Jordan Cove pipeline. PPB officer Andrew Hurst told the Southwest Oregon Joint Task Force he would let them know when Portland folks head south to protest against the pipeline, even though protesting is not a criminal activity. As many of 19 of the 22 cases noted in the report may line up with city policy allowing cooperation on suspected cases of terrorism and or threat to life, including hate crimes. However, it is not clear why most of these cases, which seem to be vague, non-criminal in nature, and in some cases the result of mental health issues, would require the pooling of local law enforcement with the FBI and a dozen or so other agencies involved in the JTTF. The city's policy is too broad, allowing investigations into people and incidents who have nothing to do with terrorism. The reporting policy is too narrow, only requiring the PPB to report on cases sent by the FBI to the police, rather than also including ones the police turned over. The reports also need to be very clear whether the Portland Police conducted investigations when there was no suspected criminal behavior. Thank you. So our next speaker is going to be from the League of Women Voters.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Kay. I am president of the League of Women Voters of Portland. We're glad to be able to address you today. The League promotes an open governmental system that is representative, accountable, and responsive, and that protects individual liberties established by the Constitution. It further promotes political responsibility through informed and active participation in government. That is what we are doing here today. We first testified on this issue in 2001 because we value the protections afforded by Oregon law to individuals engaging in political and other non-criminal First Amendment activities. City Council made the right decision when it withdrew Portland from membership in the JTTF Joint Task Force and agreed to make annual reports to the community. Community concerns about the JTTF have been reinforced by recent news about surveillance of activists protesting the proposed Jordan Cove LNG project and revelations about San Francisco police officers' inappropriate work with the FBI. The League believes that our democracy is strengthened and sustained by the public's active participation in government. That involvement is threatened when individuals feel they have to look over their shoulders
because they fear they are targets of government surveillance and file keeping. Finally, we are troubled by the prohibition on oral testimony on reports presented here to City Council. In our experience, when given the opportunity to comment, community members often provide valuable insights and raise important questions. We urge the mayor to reconsider this policy and resume accepting public testimony on the reports presented to City Council. Thank you.
All right, so the next speaker is going to be from the Portland Democratic Socialists of America. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm speaking for the Portland Democratic Socialists of America. I'd rather be testifying inside, but since we're not allowed inside, I'm speaking outside. The 2020 JTTF report describes 9 closed cases referred to Portland police. All those cases were investigations of threats made by white people, and 3 were classified as racially motivated. Nationally, 2019 saw an increase in racist violence, including a deadly attack on a California synagogue and mass shootings of 22 in El Paso, Texas by white nationalists. In the 2019 report, the Bureau justified JTTF cooperation using fear of unlikely attacks by ISIS or Al-Qaeda in Oregon. But the 2020 report shows that these were Islamophobic racist biases. Meanwhile, anti-fascist activists have been exposing international white supremacist organizing. Last August, Eugene Antifa revealed that an organization called The Base had purchased land in Washington state to use as a paramilitary training ground for establishing a white ethno-state. Rose City Antifa has reported that a member of The Base has been active in Portland far-right rallies. 3 members of The Base were arrested in Georgia this month for a plot to murder anti-fascists, and another 3 were arrested for threats related to the gun rights rally at the Virginia legislature. When far-right groups promoted a national descent on Portland in August last year, the mayor implied that violent white nationalists and those willing to defend our city were somehow equivalent. And on the day of the rally, Portland police offered a helping hand to the far right by providing safe passage away from the confrontation that they had come to create. Anti-fascists came out anyway, and Portland police arrested at least 15 likely anti-fascists who were there for defense. What are the real threats to public safety? In 2019, U.S. law enforcement shot and killed almost 1,000 people, more than those killed by mass shooters. Nationally, police have killed about 5,000 since 2015. The LA Times reported that killings by police are one of the leading causes of death for young men of color. Portland police killed 5 people in 2019 and a total of 26 people since 2010. In the current contract negotiations, the police union president claims that demands for community oversight of use of deadly force threatens constitutional bargaining rights. And City Council tied its own hands with previous contracts that made oversight toothless. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, is a member of the JTTF and is in itself a threat to public safety. It's ICE that breaks up families, traumatizes children, and feeds concentration camps. Missing from the 2020 report is the JTTF offer of assistance for illegal surveillance of Jordan Cove environmental activists. The threat of mass violence around us is real, but when law enforcement is part of the threat, it can't be the solution. Therefore, the City of Portland must remain outside the JTTF and end cooperation. Thank you. Immediate folks, now that we're going to go inside and deliver our testimony to the City Council after any questions you might have at the end of our testimony. So the next speaker is going to be from Jewish Voice for Peace, Portland.
Hello, I'm Carol Lansman with Jewish Voice for Peace. You may wonder, I would much rather be doing this inside, but because you're not accepting public testimony, we're out here. And I have to say, Mayor Wheeler, shame on you. Portland is the city of community involvement, and you are stifling it. Shame, shame. You may wonder why Jewish Voice for Peace has taken a strong position against the JTTF. Well, we are strongly opposed to Islamophobia, and we fight Islamophobia. And both the FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force have a horrible record on picking on Islamic people. For example, and the most heinous, but not the only, was the case of Mohammed, who was entrapped into laying a bomb in Pioneer Courthouse Square and is now serving a lengthy sentence after he was set up by the FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Now, we applaud you for withdrawing from the task force. However, we must end all connection with the FBI. The report shows that we're still conducting surveillance on people who do not warrant surveillance. This is Portland. We should not tolerate things like that. Withdraw us from all activity with the FBI. Thank you.
Portland's Resistance is going to be our last speaker, and then we'll end the city council hearing, and we'll take questions, and then we'll deliver the testimonies.
Hello, city councilors. It is such an honor to be in front of you today. For the record, my name is Emery Mort. In composing my speech, I wanted to dedicate it to specifically climate youth activists. Okay, so if you're a youth out there hoping to change the world for the better, to be somewhere where you can live in peace and harmony with people of all colors and all types and all backgrounds in a world that's safe, and not just human people, but all the peoples of this world, our critter friends, our environment friends. Anyways, this is for you. So as I talk, I want, if you're someone who knows a climate youth activist who's been doing such inspiring work, keep them in mind. We're out here because of policing, both federal policing and local policing, so Portland Police and the FBI. And, there's a history there. And that history is not often told. It's been told wonderfully so far today. Anyone who gets a chance to rewatch these speeches, I highly recommend it. So many great speeches today. But a lot of young people don't know the history of some of this. Part of the reason we're out here speaking, and there's no council members here, is because they don't, certain powerful politicians don't want this history told. And the law enforcement agencies don't want this history told. And the industries that profit from the destruction of movements that oppose those industries, right? The real estate industries, the for-profit health industries, the for-profit fossil fuel industries, they don't want movements to come up and oppose them and be effective. And so one of the best ways is to use law enforcement to break that up. Okay, they don't want solidarity among people. So one of the best ways to do that is to say Muslims are bad and we're going to go after them. Okay, so that's the history I'm going to get into real quick. So it used to be in the United States that even Republicans wanted to reform the FBI. They were serious. They were seriously upset about how the FBI was doing these abuses, because these abuses do not make us more safe. They hurt our safety. So it used to be that people like Chuck Grassley, Republican senator, he tried to reform the FBI. But then what happened? 9/11 happened. So then, eruption of all these wars in Middle East places. So then, we have these terrorists in our midst. And so, for you youth activists out there, you think maybe the FBI has people who have oversight over them, that maybe you can do an election, and you can have Congress people that can tell the FBI to stop infiltrating your movement, to stop surveilling and profiling your neighbors. They don't have any they do have some guidelines from the Attorney General. George W. Bush, Attorney General. Soon, Bill Barr, Attorney General. That's going to be the guidelines. It's going to open up their powers. Because now we need to protect against white nationalist terrorists. Right? So we got decades now of the FBI saying, we're going to open assessments, that's what they call them, without criminal evidence on anyone we say. Okay? We're going to go into the Muslim communities, we're going to go into any communities we want to disrupt. We're going to go into the activist communities, we're going to break them up, we're going to surveil them. These aren't law enforcement outfits, these are intelligence outfits too. It's all gathering intelligence. All right? So, all this time, the idea was that all this over-abuse was necessary to fight terrorism. And now we see white nationalist terrorism on the rise, and that's going to be the reason they give to expand their powers more. Okay? So for you youth activists, last year, 35 different community groups from Portland went up into City Hall and said, stop letting our local police engage with the FBI in degrading and destroying movements and destroying communities. Okay? Now, the mayor said no. He refused to agree. For you youth activists out there, this is really hard to understand. But these progressives who say this good stuff about how they're going to save the environment and how they're going to protect your rights, look at what they're doing, okay? Look at whose side they're on. I'm telling you, what these politicians like the mayor or the governor of the state, what they're doing is they want to tell you that your disagreements with law enforcement are wrong and that we should expand law enforcement. We should give them more money, more people, more training, more powers. All right? So be wary of that. We deserve, and you are going to lead it, youth people, to have change to a society that works for us. And these are the lessons that we've learned, that I've learned, that I hope you understand as you go through what's going to be a very, very difficult and long fight here for the next few years. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes today's City Council hearing. We're now